Hi everyone. I am so excited to bring to you this next couple of video series that we are talking about questions about faith with my friend Natasha Crain. And Natasha and I go way back to 7th grade. I won't share how many years that has been. But let me just tell you, she is an awesome woman of faith. She's been a great friend to me for so many years, and I'm just so excited to have her here with me to share with you, my students, my CWV students. She is an author of 3 books. I have this one here. I've got to get the other ones. And she is a blogger. She's a national speaker. She is a woman apologist. And here are some of her books. Here's Natasha, her beautiful face. And here are some of her books. So I'm going to just let her share. I've asked some questions from you. I've asked you to share those questions in the forum, in the discussion forum. So we're going to go through those questions, and she's going to give a little bit about her history as well. But I'm going to go ahead and start with the first question, and then she'll just share from there. So the first question we have for tonight is, why does apologetics matter?
Well, let's define apologetics first. I think that helps. And thank you for the introduction, Dr. Fulthorp, my friend who goes way, way back. It's really fun to do this. So thank you for spending the time with me. But apologetics just means how you make a case for and defend the truth of Christianity. So it's kind of a big word, but that's all it means. Sometimes people think it means that you're apologizing for something, but that's not what we're talking about at all. It's making a case for the truth of Christianity. And maybe just to explain why it matters, I can tell you a little bit about my personal story, because it's been very important to me personally. I grew up in a Christian home. I had loving, wonderful Christian parents and grandparents. And so I accepted Jesus when I was 4 or 5 years old. I was very young because it was my parents prayed with me, and I knew that I loved Jesus from what I had heard, but I was so young. And I think that a lot of people who were raised in a Christian home like I was kind of take their faith for granted to some degree. You just go to church, you assume that everything's true that you hear, and maybe you're not so challenged depending on who you're hanging out with at school. You were always a wonderful, faithful friend, but not everyone is like that. And so it kind of depends on what you're surrounded by. But I had a very untested, unexamined faith. I believed in Jesus, and I knew that I was saved, but I really didn't know what that meant. And I hadn't encountered a lot of questions myself. So fast forward me going to college, I kind of had a nominal faith by that point because I hadn't taken the time to really explore the deeper questions. And after a few years, when it was time for my husband and I to have kids, and we started thinking about, how are we going to raise our kids, and what does this mean for us as Christians? And we were still kind of in this nominal Christian place. We started talking about, well, if we're really going to raise our kids as Christians, then we better go all in on this. We better take this seriously. And so once we had kids, I started this blog, the blog that I still write today. And I just started it to write about Christian parenting in general. And I started writing just little blog posts about how we were teaching our kids about songs and things like that to worship Jesus. And after a while, I started getting a lot of skeptics coming to my website, and they were just wanting to challenge everything that I had to say about Christianity. And I was not looking to have these conversations. Let me emphasize that. I wouldn't have known what to do with these kinds of questions. But they were saying things like, there's no evidence that God exists. Science has disproved God. There's no evidence Jesus existed as a person in history. The Bible's filled with errors and contradictions, all these things that I really had no idea what to do with. And I realized my kids were growing up in a totally different world than I was growing up in. And I had no idea how to answer their questions. And that's when I discovered apologetics. And apologetics has been so important to me because once I understood how many questions there are, it was no longer enough for me to just assume what I had always learned was true. If I'm going to put my whole life on this and I'm going to give my whole life to Jesus, I better be really, really convinced that it's not just how I grew up or that I just feel it's true, but rather that I know it's true in both my head and my heart. And so I really just went into this journey of researching and getting answers to those questions. And today that's my passion, to equip other Christians with that understanding so that they know that they too can be really confident in their faith. And so for me, it's been personally important, but I believe it's important for every Christian out there to have that kind of conviction and be equipped to share that with others.
Right. Thank you. And I think that's really important. I believe that your books are not just for parents. I mean, this first one that I read was excellent. And so I think that it's great for anybody, anyone who is questioning their faith, anyone who wants to know how to defend their faith and what it really means to be a Christian and some of the deep questions of life.